6 minutes or less. With that said, start your timer. We begin today in Argentina, where their inflation rate has slowed during the month to 4.2%, marking the lowest level in over 2 years, coming in below economists' forecasts. The moderation follows a period of extremely high inflation driven by sharp devaluation and austerity measures introduced by President Javier Milei. Annual inflation still remains sharply elevated at 276.4%, but the month on month deceleration has provided relief to consumers and policymakers. From Reuters, quote, in May, consumer prices rose only 4.2% from a month earlier. Data from the official statistics agency showed the lowest rate since January 2022 and below the 5.2% forecast in a Reuters poll of analysts. The annual inflation rate, however, remains sky high, the highest in Latin America. End quote. Next, we travel across the Atlantic to Egypt, where they have purchased a record amount of wheat from its local farmers this season, a result of government reform intended to encourage more domestic production. The reforms included price incentives and changes to procurement rules, aiming to reduce reliance on imports and global supply challenges. And the achievement comes as Egypt is the world's largest wheat importer, and they are facing ongoing economic and food security pressures. The higher domestic wheat purchases are expected to help stabilize local bread supplies and support the country's subsidy program. From Reuters, quote, the government repeatedly raised the price it paid to farmers and implemented measures intended to make it easier for them to sell their crops. The outcome was the most ever wheat procured from Egyptian farmers during the harvest season, the government officials said. End quote. Next, we travel down to Mexico, where families of Mexico's disappeared marched in Mexico City to draw attention to the plight of their missing loved ones as the 2026 World Cup kicked off. The demonstrators held up photographs of the victims and demanded that the government do more to address the crisis of disappearance in the country. Many protesters pointed out the contrast between lavish preparations for the World Cup and the ongoing tragedy affecting thousands of families. From Reuters, quote, carrying photographs of the missings and signs reading, where are they? Family members called on Mexican authorities to do more to find their loved ones and to hold perpetrators accountable. The demonstration, planned to coincide with the World Cup opening, sought to highlight what protesters see as authorities' negligence amid preparations for the international event. End quote. Next, across the Pacific, the Philippine defense chief has pledged to continue pushing back against Chinese actions in the South China Sea, despite Beijing imposing sanctions on Filipino officials. The Philippines will not be intimidated by China's moves and will continue asserting its claims according to international law. From Reuters, quote, she also vowed that the Southeast Asian nation would not be deterred by China's blacklisting of its officials and said Manila would continue our efforts to defend our sovereignty, sovereign rights, and jurisprudence, and uphold the rule of law in the West Philippine Sea. End quote. Next, we travel south to Australia, where their central bank has decided to keep its interest rates unchanged going through June. From Reuters, quote, Australia's central bank on Tuesday held interest rates steady for its seventh consecutive policy meeting and reiterated an open mind on future moves as it awaited more data, while a minority of analysts still saw a risk of one more hike given sticky inflation, end quote. And finally, we end today in Europe, where British Defence Minister John Healey has resigned from his position due to a disagreement with the government over defence spending levels. Healey warned that the current funding is insufficient to address UK's mounting security threats. His departure, coming weeks before an anticipated general election, puts additional pressure on the administration and highlights tensions within the ruling party about military funding priorities. From Reuters, quote, Healy said in his resignation letter that he could not support the government's plan for defense spending. And, quote, warning that it falls short of what is needed for our national security, end quote. And if you want to read any of today's articles in their entirety, you can find them all in the description links down there. You can find the links in the description below the like and subscribe button. Also down there, you can find the podcast on Spotify, Pocket Cast, Podvine, as well as the Twitter handle at Your Daily Flip, where I post links to these episodes anytime that they come out. So with all that said, there's only one more thing to say. Stay safe, don't die.